Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of favorite song from each album. And today I have two wonderful guests that you'll know from the Contrarians and several other places as well. I have Mr. Grant Arthur from Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I have Mr. Todd Evans from pretty much wherever good music content on YouTube is to be found.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Nice to see you. Thanks for
Great.
having
It's
us.
good to be here. Yeah.
It's been a while, like you said, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. So this one's kind of linking into a couple of episodes that we've done on the Contrarians where we've talked about the band The Cars. And today we're going to go through the Cars albums and we're going to pick our favorite song from each album. So let's get straight into it. And the first one is obviously the debut album, The Cars, that wonderful album cover. And we'll start with Grant. Grant, what is your favorite song from the Cars debut album?
Oh, well, this album is so strong. But, I've mentioned this before on the car shows that I look at this record and Candio as both like the same album. You could take these albums and mix them up and they could still all fit because all the music on these, at least the first two records, there's nothing weak on them. They're all top-notch songs. But the person that I really think shines out on these records is Ben Orr. And I'm going to pick a Ben Orr song because I think, well, Rick Ocasek, fine and dandy, but the Ben Orr vocals on this record are just incredible. And I'm going to go with Bye Bye Love, which was, I do believe that was a single off of this too at one time. It's like an old song. It's really an old song in their catalog. I mean, this song, at least the songwriting of it dated back to like the early 70s. So it's been a long, but the melodies, Ben Orr's vocal delivery on it, to me, this is the standout track on this record for me.
Yeah.
Though there's not a weak song, like I said, and your mileage may vary, but for me, this is just the top notch of the first album for me. Yeah.
No, excellent choice. Todd, what did you go for?
And I have to say real quick on Bye Bye Love, those trademarked David Robinson drum fills. That's kind of where you get the biggest dose of those. I could have picked anything from this album as well. I could have easily picked something off of side one, but I picked something off of side two, and I picked All Mixed Up. And here's my rationale for that. So one of the things I like about that song is that if you know anything about the history of the Cars, they've been playing for a long time in various bands. And, they were a little bit older than I think everybody thought they were. And when you think about a song called like All Mixed Up, this is kind of, at the time, especially, it was very kind of a quirky, new wavy kind of a record. And All Mixed Up is not that really at all. And I can remember hearing this album for the first time and getting to the end of that song with the saxophone solo, and I would thinking to myself, and it really a pretty straightforward rock vocal by Ben. And I remember thinking, well, that was interesting. I wasn't expecting the album to end like that. But the main reason is that I'm a huge I'm a pretty big Greg Hawkes fanboy, and his career is very interesting. His first job his first professional music job was being in Martin Mull's band in Los Angeles, and there's even a sketch comedy show that he's in as a cast member from back then. It's like 74 or 75, something like that. And I really feel like All Mixed Up is kind of Greg Hawkes' moment to shine, and so that's why I've always been really fond of it, because it's got a saxophone solo, not a great saxophone solo, but there's something about it that's really super charming, and I've just always loved that song. So I'm going to pick All Mixed Up.
No, fair enough. No, it's a good choice.
Who plays the sax solo on that, Todd?
Greg.
Greg.
It is Greg. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the sax solo is great. I don't know. Song does stand out.
I didn't mean to insult it. It's just, it's not exceptionally good, but the fact that it's Greg playing it, I think, gives it a lot of charm.
I think what you
But
mean is it's not sort of technically, it's not John
Mhm.
Coltrane or something like that.
Yeah,
But
or even David Sanborn.
yeah,
right. But it
but
fits the track. I will
yeah,
It
agree.
does.
it's very nice for
It
what it
does.
is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am going to go in a different direction from you two fine gentlemen, because this is going to be a recurring theme for me with these Cars albums, as far as the songs that I'm going to pick as my favorites, is I tend to go for the most sort of quirkiest new wavy sounding, because they really scratch an itch, musical itch in me. So the song that I'm going to go for is Don't Just Stop, because I really feel that that's the one that has that most of that sort of kinetic new wave energy in it. It's an up tempo song, and there's some great guitar in it. There's some great keyboards in it. Rick sings a wonderful vocal on it. And just that chorus, it's just so, it's just buzzing with that new wave energy. So that's the one I'm going to go for. I'm going to quick honorable mention shout out for the song Moving in Stereo, because I think that's a great song too. But as you guys both said, you could choose any song on this album. I mean, there are 9 songs on this album, and I would say 7 of them still get played on classic rock radio to this day. It's almost a greatest hits album, and it's their debut album. It's just incredible. So we
Yeah.
move on to the second album, which, as Grant has already noted, is Candio. Another great album cover.
Mhm. Another
And
great album.
yeah, absolutely. And what did you go for, Grant, on this one as your favorite
Well,
song?
there's this was a little bit harder than the first album for me, but I'm going to go with yet another Ben Orr song. I'm going to go with the third track. It's All I Can Do. I'm going to go with that. Again, for very similar reasons that I picked the previous track. The melody, it's kind of romantic. It's pure pop. Ben Orr sounds great on it. I'm telling you, Rick Ocasek knew what songs to give to Ben Orr.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben, or even Rick, you've seen Rick Ocasek sing some of Ben Orr's songs. He can do it, but the delivery and just the tonality of Ben Orr just makes me melt. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe Todd, I sound like a Ben Orr fanboy now. As opposed to what you were
Well, I'm
saying,
one of
Greg
those
Hawkes.
too. So.
Okay, but I think it's a perfect single. It's like the second single on the record. I think it's just perfect. I think it's
Yeah.
perfect pop masterpiece. It is. It undeniable. So
Hard
that's
to
my
argue with. Yeah. No, great choice. Todd, what did you go for?
Yeah, I also almost picked It's All I Can Do. My favorite thing about It's All I Can Do is that the keyboard part is so simple. It's like it's just almost minimalist, and I absolutely love that. It's orchestrated, but just barely. But I went with again, I could have picked anything. I almost picked Double Life Shooby Doo Candio, which for me is one thing. And but I figured that wasn't really fair, because technically that's 3 songs. but I went with Night Spots. Night Spots has always been, that was my first favorite song on the record. And I just love the sound of it. It's kind of spooky sounding. I love the fact that it's got Greg Hawkes he's playing like a string, kind of a synth sound, but he plays it like it's a more of a he plays it like it's more of a buzzy sound, or like it's more of an organ sound, but he's using this kind of soft string sound to do it. And I just love the keyboard part. I mean, I love everything about Night Spots. I love that it's got all of those little sound effects in it, and I think the guitar parts are super inventive. So yeah, I always go towards Night Spots, and so that's what I'm going to pick.
Yep. No, good choice. In fact, like, I've got a couple of choices, as I said to the gentleman before we started recording. I've got a couple of choices in case we sort of double up on a song, and that was my second pick. So that was my honorable mention. So excellent choice. Can't argue with that. I love this album, but for me, for me, the real joys on this album are some of the deep cuts rather than the songs that everybody knows. I mean, I love Let's Go. I love It's All I Can Do. I love Dangerous Type. You know, they're all great songs. But for me, the real sort of best bits of this album are some of the deeper cuts. And the song I've gone for is Lust for Kicks. Again, you know, this is going to be, you know, this is another real sort of new wave, quirky song that I really, really love. So it's on side 2. I really like side 2. You know, as good as side 1 is, side 2 is even better for me. So yeah, that's the song I'm going to go for, is Lust for Kicks. So then we get, yeah. So then we get into the Cars starting to do something a little different, a little more experimental, and we get into Panorama. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for the panel that you guys did on this album on the Contrarians. I was there for the other 2, but not for this one. Would have loved to have discussed this
as well. Yeah,
would have loved to have discussed this album with you guys, because it is a bit of an oddball album in the collection, but I think it's a really good album nonetheless. Grant, what did you go for on this album as your favorite song?
This is where things started getting more difficult, because yeah, on this album they're a lot more experimental. I think on the Dark Horse episode that we determined, we actually gave this album pretty high review. I think if I remember right, it might have got like an 8 out of 10. So it's aged well. The panel really liked it. But then again, I don't think this album, Ben Orr, has, how would I want to say it? His vocalizations sound great on this record. Don't get me wrong, but I think Rick Ocasek is taking more of the stronger tracks. Like, obviously, if you're looking for something that came before, you're obviously going to go with Panorama or Touch and Go. Though Panorama is pretty experimental. I like both of those. But on this record, when it's not quite as accessible as what came before, this really is hard. But I think I'm just going to go with Touch and Go, because it was the single. The video, did you gentlemen ever remember seeing the video back in the day where they recorded it in that parking garage?
I've watched it. This is a long time ago.
I know that you don't really see it, but I still remember when I was a kid. I mean, I was really into the Cars, so I still remember it. It made an effect on me. But I thought that this track really is experimental, but yet it still captures what came before. It's accessible enough to be a single. And I think if we're picking singles, I don't know what else I would pick. Panorama, but it is kind of quirky, the time signature with that. But I think this is great. The textural guitar work of Elliot Easton, the keyboards on here. It's Rick Ocasek. It's not Ben Orr. I know I'm a big Ben Orr fanboy, but I'm just going to have to take this. I don't know.
No.
There's a reason choice. This was a reason this was a single. So I'm going to go with that.
No, fair enough. I always like the song, you know, because in the verses, it's a little more sort of eerie and experimental and odd, but then the chorus is still very immediate and catchy. So it's a kind of odd song, how it's very different parts in that respect. But no, good choice. Todd, what did you go for?
Well, I also went for Touch and Go, but I wanted to mention real quick that the video that I've seen probably more than the official video for Touch and Go is the one where they performed on the TV show Fridays. And because I remember like getting all excited and staying up late to watch that, because you didn't get to see the Cars very often on TV. So I'm very fond of that video. But Touch and Go, I had to pick for a couple of reasons. I love the way it starts out, kind of an eerie, kind of a keyboardy new wave sound, and then it goes into this like country shuffle, and which I think is so cool. And one of the things I like the most about Cars songs is that they have a lot of counterpoint in them. They have a lot of one melody starts and then another melody lays on top of it, and another melody lays on top of it. And one of the things I like about Touch and Go is that it has some of that going on, but it's a little bit more. It's more of a guitar-based song than some of the other songs that do that. And there's so many little parts that are played in it that are just very simple, just a couple of notes, but just little things that all go together. And when you stack them on top of each other, they all work together. And that's one of the things I love about Touch and Go. But the thing that I love most about Touch and Go is the legendary guitar solo by Elliot Easton. One of my favorite guitar solos of all time. And I was thinking about it today. I was going, imagine if you're Elliot Easton and you hear this song and you think, what kind of a solo should I play in this song? And the answer is exactly what he played. I think it's absolutely perfect. It's weird. It doesn't sound like any other solo I've ever heard. And it's one of my favorite solos of all time.
Yeah.
So Touch and Go for me too. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'm going to go with Panorama because I really love the odd time signatures that Grant was talking about earlier. To me, this song has a bit of a Devo feel to it.
Yeah.
So, that's obviously going to appeal to me because I'm like, Devo were pretty much the first band I ever started following as a kid. So, but yeah, it's just a really odd song to start an album with too. And an odd song to pick as a single because it's not a catchy song at all. It's certainly not the way that those singles off those first two albums are just so undeniably, hooky and catchy. This is not that at all, but it's odd and it's spiky and prickly, and I really like that about it. So I'm going to give a quick shout out to one deep cut on this album that I think is a really good song too, and that is Down Boys. Really great up-tempo song. So yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something about You Wear Those Eyes too, but I forgot. I think nobody ever talks about that song, and I think that song is great. Super weird, but very cool.
Yeah.
I agree.
So then we get into the fourth album, Shake It Up. This is where my Cars journey began as a kid. This was the first Cars album that I ever heard. I feel like this one is an interesting album for me because I feel like it has a foot in the past and a foot in the future as to where the Cars had been and were going. So, but it's an album that I really, really like. Grant, what did you choose off this one?
Bicycle Legs, that's an interesting how you segued into that. This does have a foot in the past and a foot into the future to a certain extreme. There are elements of Panorama on here. There's elements of, Shake It Up. Kind of combines them both. But the song, I could pick the obvious track. I think most people would probably pick Shake It Up. It's still like old Cars. You've got that thumpity thump, that jazz master sound that Rick Ocasek always brings to the Cars tracks. It is, but I'm not going to choose that. That's the obvious choice. I'm going to go with Cruiser, which is a Ben Orr track, which is it's kind of in that Panorama kind of territory, but it's a rockier track. This was the B-side. What was this a B-side of? Shake It Up. It wasn't chosen as an A-side. It did peak up 37 on the rock mainstream chart, but I love Benjamin Orr on this. I love the instrumentation. It's stark. You've got drum machine on here. David Robinson is playing over the drum machine. They're both going on at the same time, but I think it's probably Ben Orr's strongest track on here.
Yeah.
But still, it's a little bit different. They've progressed. It's not like what's on the first two records. This still has much more of a Panorama feel to me.
Yeah.
But this is not quite out there, they're reining it in a bit. So I'm going to pick that. Not many people would probably pick that, but I'm going to go with it. That is my favorite track on the record.
No, it's a good left field choice. I like it. Todd, what did you go for?
Okay, so first, before I say which song I picked, because I had an upset. I had one picked all the way up until like this evening, and then I changed my mind at the last minute. But one thing I want to say about this album is that this is I think this is the best sounding Cars album. albums, and I think it's one of the best sounding rock albums I've ever heard. This is the last one that they did with Roy Thomas Baker, and I believe that it was the first one they did it at the Synchro Sound Studio.
Yep.
And I think it sounds the best. I think Victim of Love and Cruiser, both. The whole album sounds good, but those two songs I think sound really great. And I almost picked one of them just because I love the way it sounds so much. But I was going to go with Shake It Up because I thought that, Shake It Up has such a great sound to it. And it's so, I use Shake It Up to like test audio gear. I love the way it sounds so much. Great drum sound. But I had to admit that Since You're Gone, I think is probably better. Since You're Gone with that click track at the beginning, the vocal is fantastic. The lyrics are just outstanding. Since You're Gone, I took the big vacation. That used to always make me laugh, and now it makes me a little bit sad because I don't like to think about living in a world where we're not Rick Ocasek isn't with us. But I love this song. I love the Robert Fripp-esque guitar solo by Elliot Easton. And so I had to at the last minute admit that I thought that Since You're Gone is the best track.
Yeah, no, good choice. Yeah, I agree with you 100% that this is the best sounding Cars album. And yeah, it's a really good one. It's certainly better sounding than the next couple, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll get into that when we get into those albums. But look, I am going to go for the bog standard choice, and I am going to go with Shake It Up. And that's a sentimental reason for me, because it is literally the very first Cars song I ever heard. And it's what hooked me on the band. So I had to go with that for sentimental reasons. It's just such an undeniably great up-tempo single. I'm pretty sure it was their biggest ever hit too on the charts. Certainly was huge here in Australia. But I'm going to give a shout out to one album track, and that is Think It Over, which again, really great energy on that song. So yeah, again, and I think it's a song that doesn't get talked about very much. So I wanted to give that one a shout out as well. So then we get into the biggest album in their history, in their career, Heartbeat City. I have a very complicated relationship with this record. I think there are some great songs on this album, but I really, really don't like Mutt Lange's production on it at all. But yeah, when I ranked these albums originally, I think I had this one 5th. I would probably drop this one down to last now, just because of the production. That's just, the more I listen to this album in modern times, the more the production irks me. But there's still some undeniably great Cars songs on this album. Mm-hmm. Grant, what did you go for as your favorite song off this album?
I will say I do agree with you. Bicyclelegs 100%. The production is a problem. But think about it, though. When this came out, we didn't think anything about it. Yeah, I like the earlier Cars sound better, but everything sounded like this. And, Mutt's production style doesn't translate well into the 2000s. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I do want to mention is that if you listen to FM rock radio, you cannot escape Def Leppard and Mutt's productions. And I don't get it because it's very dated. We're talking Def Leppard, and it's very similar in the production style. It's really not anything any different. Yes. So if we look at the track listing on Heartbeat City, there's the songwriting's great. If you could have gave it, I would have loved to seen Roy Thomas Baker produce this. But there are 2 tracks that I love on this record that I think are total classics. I mean, I'm not looking at the singles. Heartbeat City, I can still listen to Heartbeat City and think it's brilliant. And to watch them play that at Live Aid, it was incredible. Love Heartbeat City, but that's not what I'm going to choose. You know what I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose Drive, the ballad on the song A ballad on the album, Ben Orr. Oh my God. The delivery. I remember when this came out, I didn't really even know it was the Cars. It's such an outlier. They really had never done anything quite like this, you know?
Yeah.
But oh my God, what a beautiful song. Have you heard Rick Ocasek sing this? His version
No, I
of it is,
haven't.
yeah, it's still good.
Mm.
But Ben Orr and his delivery, it's just the perfect love song. This probably has to be my favorite track of 1984. I will go out there on a limb and say that. But we're talking 1984. This record is full of singles. It's really full of great songs. It's too bad it doesn't translate well. When we talked about door to door on the Contrarians, I think we all agreed that the production on that translated much better than this.
Yeah.
This is taking a back seat. But you two may see it differently. But I'm going with Drive as my favorite. It's pop perfection once again.
It's a gorgeous song, and it's probably the one Cars song that people who don't really like the Cars still like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's got that, you know, that's why it was such a huge hit. I think it had crossover appeal into, you know, areas of music that, you know, maybe the Cars normally wouldn't get into. The sort of fans that normally wouldn't get into the Cars would still go out and buy that single because it's just an undeniably beautiful song. Yeah. Todd, what did you pick?
Well, I think, granted, I see this album in a very similar way. You know, first of all, I want to say this, and this may be completely irrelevant to this show, but one of the things I love about the Cars is their design. And this design about how the lyrics are written was just brilliant. And they did it on the first three records. And the first three records were produced by Roy Thomas Baker. And then you get this. And you're just like, now it just looks like any other record. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's always bothered me about this record is you have to actually take the sleeve out to see the names of the tracks, which, again, a strange choice. And my other issue with it is, you know, the Mutt Lange production. You know, Mutt Lange tries to make, you know, like he does on everything, he tries to make it sound like it's got this big, fat, super loud background vocal thing happening. And it's like, you want to go, no, the Cars already have their own super loud, super effective, you know, sound. He doesn't completely destroy it, but he just Mutt Lange's it up just a little bit. Like on Hello Again, and I think Stranger Eyes and a couple other places. But I'm going to be very predictable and choose Drive. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong part of the sleeve. I'm gonna pick Drive too. I think Drive's a beautiful song, and I think that the keyboard arrangement in Drive is absolutely gorgeous. And I don't even mind the sound of the programmed drums on it, which I think was another curious choice that they made. But on that particular track, I don't think anything can ruin that track.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to choose that. I also love Heartbeat City, and I like Looking for Love a lot. I almost picked that. But
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
good.
kind of an underrated song. But I picked Drive too. It's just too good.
Fair enough. No, you know, with that Mutt Lange production, you hear it the very second you drop the needle on this record, don't you? When you get that hello, hello.
Sounds like Def Leppard.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Def Leppard before Def Leppard really sounded like that. You know, he would go and do that even to a much greater extent when he did Def Leppard. I'm going to go for a fairly obvious choice on this one too, but it's not going to be Drive. It's going to be You Might Think. Because again, I remember being 13 years old when that song came out and just absolutely falling in love with it and absolutely loving the film clip for it. You know, that back then in 1984, that film clip looked so innovative. It didn't look like anything else that I was seeing at the time in 1984. It got copied a hell of a lot afterwards. But yeah, it's just a great up-tempo song. It's a really catchy single. I like the sort of slightly sarcastic lyric of it. Yeah, it's a great song. I'm going to give a shout out to Stranger Eyes, though, even though it does have those Mutt Lange vocals on it. I think it's a really good song too. So yeah, that's my pick. Is You Might Think. So then we get into Door to Door, which we have done an episode of on the Contrarians as a Dark Horse album.
Yeah.
Great, great. You know, all their album covers are wonderful, I think. I don't think there's a bad album cover in the bunch. But we gave this a pretty good rating, if I remember correctly, about like a
Yeah.
7.6 or something like that. It was
Something like
something
that.
around
Yeah.
that. It's definitely an album that gets overlooked in the catalog. And I will be the first one to admit that I had been guilty of that. When I did my original Cars ranking, I think I did put this one at the bottom. I wouldn't do that now. I would have it a couple of rungs higher. But there's some great songs on here, and then there's a couple of songs that I don't really care for, which I went into in detail when I had my turn on the Contrarians panel for that one. By the way, for all my viewers, I will leave links in the description to all three of the Contrarians Dark Horse Cars panels. So you can go into the description and check those all out. They're wonderful shows and definitely worth a watch. So Grant, what did you go for as your favorite song on this album?
Well, this was a bit difficult because, well, it's difficult, but then it's not. I think this is kind of like Heartbeat City Light to some degree. It's way turned back. It's kind of like, instead, if you have Heartbeat City as a 10, this is like a 6. It's not quite, it still has some tendencies. This is a guitar based record, a lot of distorted guitar on here, the noisiest record that Rick Ocasek's ever done. And there's very minimal guitar solos. Check out the Contrarians episode where we deal with that. But I think as a song, I mean, there's a couple of songs I could go with. God, there really is some good songs on here. I guess I'm going to have to go with You Are the Girl because it is obviously definitely a top 40 single. It's catchy. It's like something that could have been written on the first album, you know? It still has that kind of I don't want to say canned, but that cars sound that you're familiar with from back in the day. And oh my God, Rick Ocasek and Ben Orr on here just sound absolutely stunning. What did this get on the charts? And Billboard Hot 100 got up to 17. So that's not too bad. I think they kind of look at this album as a failure and maybe the singles didn't perform as well. But think about it. After you've gone and done an album like Heartbeat City with all those singles, how do you follow that up? But I think this is a good record. I'm glad we did it on the Contrarians because I probably wouldn't have revisited it. But now it's like one of my favorite Cars records. I love this record. Yeah. I think it's a great record. And the more you listen to it, the more it authors. So if anybody's watching this and they're going, well, oh, Grant, come on. Swear to God, dive back into this record and check it out. But I do think that the single, You Are the Girl, is pop perfection. I kind of look at it as, what was the track that was on Greatest Hits? Help me.
Tonight She Comes.
Tonight She Comes. Sorry, brain problem. Yeah. I kind of look at this track as like part 2 of Tonight She Comes because that track could have been easily on Door to Door. And I think if we talked about this on the Contrarians, if we would have had, Tonight She Comes on here and pluck something else off, I think this would have helped Door to Door to even be a bigger record, but that wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
But Tonight She Comes, which we really should mention, is one of the all-time great car songs on Greatest Hits.
Absolutely.
But on Door to Door, I am going to go with You Are the Girl. Great single. Yep. But there's yet another song that we could also mention. Maybe someone else will. That was another great single. But that's my choice.
Yeah. No, good choice. Good choice. Todd, what did you go for?
Well, I believe I have been quoted as saying, "What's wrong with Door to Door? Not a damn thing."
There you go.
I love this record for a bunch of reasons. It's the return of David Robinson playing the kit, and a much more Cars-like production, produced by Rick Ocasek. I don't think that I think that he did a really good job producing it. I think I've always thought of the song Panorama as the song is what the Cars would sound like if Rick got his way all the time. And so I, this record having songs on it that just sound like the Cars, I think he did a really good job producing it. I could have picked Leave or Stay, which I absolutely love. I could have picked You Are the Girl. I was disappointed at the time that this came out that You Are the Girl didn't do better than you might think, because I think they're very similar songs, but I think You Are the Girl is better. But I am going with what I always go with anytime I talk about this record, and that's Go Away. Beautiful Ben Orr vocal on that. It's lush and thick, and it's a great lyric, and the way he sings it is very heartfelt. And no guitar solo on this song. It's one of the ones that I think really doesn't need one. But I just love Go Away so much. I love the build up to the last verse. He sings it with so much passion, and then it goes into basically just a repeated vamp of the chorus, and it does it for a really long time. And you think it's going to fade out, but it just kind of holds on that, which I think is a good thing, because I think it's really beautiful. I have said at times that Go Away is my favorite car song, that I think it's the best car song. I'm not sure about that. I waffle on that a little, but I really love it. So I'm going with Go Away.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, good choice. And that is a left field choice, which,
Wow.
that's really good. Yeah, it's a good song. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to pull a bit of a last minute switcheroo here, because the two songs I had written down, we have talked about, and they're both wonderful songs, which is Leave or Stay and You Are the Girl. Leave or Stay, I feel like, that's an old Cars song. It's from like before the first album. And it has that sound until it gets into that bit where it says, should I leave or stay? And that bit sounds much more like modern 80s Cars. So it's still it's a wonderful song. You Are the Girl, undeniable single, absolutely wonderful. But I am going to pick the title track, Door to Door, because it is just so raucous and up-tempo, and probably the punkiest thing that the Cars ever did. The Cars never really strayed into punk territory. They were, strictly a new wave band. But this song has it's not a punk song out and out, but it has a punky energy to it, which I really, really like. And also there's chord changes in this song that almost remind me, like, the song doesn't sound sonically at all like this band, but just the chord changes that they chose have a little bit of a Wall of Voodoo vibe to me. Where it goes
I can hear that.
The dun 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 dun. I could hear that in a Wall of Voodoo song with a completely different arrangement, of course. But that chord progression reminds me of that band. So yeah, I'm going to go with the title track, Door to Door, as a sort of a last minute switcheroo, because those three songs, any one of them could be my favorite depending on what day you ask me. So yeah, there we go, Door to Door. And then we get the much awaited comeback album, the one that Rick Ocasek said would never ever happen, and you could quote him on that. And that is Move Like This, which thankfully I actually recently got a vinyl copy of, thanks to one of my favorite record stores here in Brisbane, Stash Records in Camp Hill.
So jealous.
Hi, Skipper, if you're watching. Great album. The more I listen to this album in recent times, and I've been listening to it quite a bit, like when we did the Contrarian show for this one, I listened to it a lot. And then in prep for this show, I've been listening to the whole Cars discography in the car. Appropriate place to listen to it, of course. And this album has been growing on me more and more as we go along. Mm-hmm. It's not a perfect Cars album, but it's a great sounding record, I think. And it, considering it had been, 25 years almost between albums, It sounds wonderful. Ben is missed, of course, and we went into the lack of guitar solos on this in the Contrarians episode. But I still think the songs are great, and the sound of this record is really, really good. So, Grant, what did you pick as your favorite song off this
Well,
album?
this was the hardest one for me to pick.
Yeah.
But I agree with everything you say. I do think Ben Orr's missed, but everybody comes together and it sounds like the Cars, you
Yeah.
know? And I think the songwriting's great. I mean, Rick wrote a bunch of Cars songs, plain and simple. Wish we had Ben Orr, and I wish we had some guitar solos, for God's sakes. But if I have to pick one song, I could pick, I've got a couple, but I'm gonna go with Sad Song.
Yeah.
Because it does kind of remind you of the old Cars there for a little bit, like Best Friend's Girl and that type of era, Let's Go, stuff like that. It's not a sad song by any means. It's very cheery, but it sounds like classic Cars to me. Did this come out as a single? I don't.
Yes, it did.
Did it? Probably didn't get very high. Canada got up to 49. Got Billboard Rock songs. It got up to 33. I guess that's pretty good. Think about a band that hadn't been around for such a long time, at least charting somewhere. And it was great to hear them back at it. I remember hearing news about this record coming out, and I was so excited. I could hardly wait. I couldn't imagine because, you both gentlemen know that it was never going to happen. So, I was happy with what was produced. I think it's great. With the passing of Rick Ocasek, we'll never see yet another record. And I'm surprised that they never put out yet another album after this, but I guess wasn't meant to be. But I'm going to go with Sad Song because it does harken back to that sweet period in the Cars. So,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially the beginning of the song where it's got the hand claps and the jung, 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 jung,
it's got that chunk. It's the Fender Jazzmaster sound. That's what that is. And I love it. I am a sucker for that sound. That chunka. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And that's like I think that has a lot to do with their hit singles because think about the Shake It Up. It's got that same thing. That's that patented. That's that stamp. That's that car stamp. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, great choice. Great choice. Todd, what did you go for?
Yeah, that is good choice. I agree. Sad song. I got stuck on whether I was going to pick between two songs, and I got stuck on the first two. And I almost picked Blue Tip because I love the way the song sounds, but it also has kind of that weird kind of country shuffle kind of thing happening, like the touch and go thing happening in it. And so I almost picked that, but I decided to pick Too Late. I think Too Late is the prettiest, most melodic song on the album. And no guitar solo. It's got a very simple keyboard solo, like where the guitar solo would go, which of course I like that because it's not what you expect, but I like that he name checks the album in the lyrics of the song. And it's got some classic David Robinson drum fills, which, are nothing super special, nothing too flashy or technical, but it makes you think of the first couple albums. And so, so I picked Too Late.
Yeah, no, good choice. With Dave Robertson, he puts in a good performance on this album, which is remarkable considering he hadn't picked up a pair of drumsticks for 20 years, So, wonderful performance. I am going to go with Blue Tip because again, same with the song Panorama. It's got a bit of a Devo feel to me in particular. That song would not have sounded out of place to me on the Devo comeback album, Something for Everybody. I think they have a very similar sound, that song and that record. It's just a wonderful song. Some great keyboards that really almost chip tunes keyboard in the verses that you know, it sounds like something from an 8-bit computer game. It's wonderful.
It does. Yeah.
So that's going to be my choice, but I'm going to give a shout out to the opener on side B, which is Free, because I think that's another really great up-tempo song. I do tend to prefer on this album the songs that were produced by Jackknife Lee as opposed to the ones that the band produced themselves. I think they sound a little better and they sound a little more classic Cars, whereas I think the ones that the band produced sound more of the 80s Cars, and I love the 80s Cars, but I love the early Cars better. So yeah, but I think it's a really good album. So thank you, gentlemen, for doing this with me. If you want to check out Grant Arthur, he has his own channel, Grant's Rock Warehouse, which I'm sure you're all already subscribed to, but if you're not, go over there and give it a sub. There will be a link in the description, as well as a link to the Contrarians, where you can see all three of us at various times doing wonderful shows. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Really, really great to have you, and we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Sounds good.
Well,
thanks.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
So yeah. So please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see, it's a small playlist for this series. I did do a wonderful first episode with about 10cc with the wonderful Steve Schnee in favorite songs from each album. Please do go and check that out. If you want to look at some of my studio albums ranked shows, including one for the Cars, there's a playlist for those. If you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like the Contrarians or Grant's Rock Warehouse, I have a playlist for those as well. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Please come and give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.